It's Platt, back with another episode of One Gallon Brewing. Today I show you how to brew a Marzen. So let's go. Alright gang, I got a fun little brew for us today, something I'm looking forward to for a couple of different reasons. First off, Marzens are also known as Oktoberfest. That's right, I'm brewing an Oktoberfest beer. I love these styles of beer. Malt forward, easy drinking beers. I literally can drink them by the gallon. I really love the beers. Now you may be saying, well, wait a minute, it's March. Why are we brewing a Oktoberfest beer? Well, the term Marzen is German for March. Apparently, there was a time in the past in Germany that brewing was only allowed from the end of September to the end of April, which means that you had to produce beer last you through the summer, especially when Oktoberfest is celebrated toward the end of September. So they produced something called a Marzen, which is German for March, a style of beer in March that would be brewed in March and spend the summers in the cold caves in Germany lagering. That means that's German to store. They would spend the summer in these cold caves, and then when Oktoberfest was ready, time to tap the kegs, boys. We're having fun. So we're also going to get to produce our first lager. We have not produced a lager yet in this 1 gallon beer series. Lagers generally take a little more work, and we'll discuss that throughout this video. But the homebrewer can produce a lager. It can be done, but we're going to have to take some more steps in that. So I'm excited from that point of view. I've done a couple lagers before, have not been 100% successful, but I think I know where I went wrong, so I'm looking forward to this. So with that being said, real quick, I normally go over the mash bill at the end of the video, but we're going to do this up front because there's more stuff I have to talk about in the back. So what I got here is 7 quarts of water. We're going to heat up. We'll get to the temperatures and all that stuff when we get to the mash in. Our mash bill is 1.25 pounds of Vienna Malt, half a pound of Pilsner Malt, half a pound of Munich dark malt, and we are going to throw in a Whirlfloc tablet. Our hops will be Saaz and Hallertau. And one of the things in making lager beer is we're going from ale yeast to a lager yeast. I'm using the Saflager dry lager. I think it's the S23 or, yeah, S23. If you can find a especially Oktoberfest Marzen yeast, please go with that. But if not, the Saflager yeast will do just fine. All right, guys, with that being said, let's get to brewing a Marzen. All right, guys, time to mash in our grains. Let's get started here. Today we're doing something a little different than normal. For standard ales, we're generally mashing in at around 100. Well, I'll heat the water at 160 degrees, and then once I add the grains, that will cool it down to roughly the mid-150s, and we'll just leave it like that for an hour. Today we're doing something a little different because it's a lager. We're doing something called a step mash. Basically, we're going to rest the grains at different temperatures kind of along the way, or kind of, keep stepping up the temperature throughout the process. So we're going to let this rest. I brought this up to 154. We're going to let this rest at 148 for the next 20 minutes. I've talked about in other brewing videos that depending on the temperature you mash in, you kind of get, different things from different temperatures. Cooler mash in temperatures, like in the mid 140s or so, you're going to be more efficient. You're going to get more of those sugars out. If you mash in a little warmer in the mid 150s or so, there's more complex sugars created, and more of those sugars kind of carry over after fermentation. Some of that sweetness carries over. You get a little more body to the beer. And so, there's benefits and costs to both. So I'm just going to let this lid sit on. We're going to let this sit for 20 minutes at 148, and then we'll come back to raise the temperature. All right, gang, we have brought this up now. We spent 20 minutes at 148. We've brought this up now to about 158 degrees, and we're going to let this sit now for with the lid on for roughly 40 minutes. The way old brewers back in Europe would have done this method would have been a little different. They'd done something called a decoction mashing, which is basically taking a portion of the mash. Let's say this is a 5 gallon batch, we had taken a gallon, put it off to the side, boiled that, then put it back in to raise to that next temperature level we want to hold at. We're doing 1 gallon. We've got a stove. Easiest way to do it. So we're going to let this sit for 40 minutes, and then we'll come back for our last step of the mash. All right, we let our wort sit at 158 for 40 minutes. We've brought it up now to 170. I'll put the lid on. We're kind of in that mash out phase. We're going to let this sit for 10 minutes and then go into our boil. Part of the reason why this was done in the past, the original brewers of these style of beers back a couple hundred years ago did not get fully modified malt. The science behind malting grains was not quite as defined as it is today, and so they had to do these steps to kind of make sure that they were going to extract what they could out of the barley. Today, of course, we have, properly modified malt to use, but this still helps us with our efficiency, so it's still an important step. We will come back next to start the boil. All right, gang, so I just got done straining the grains, and we've started our boil. You see we're starting to get our little hot break going here. As far as boils goes, there's real no difference between a lager and an ale, so we don't have any additional steps here. Just our standard, we're doing a standard 60-minute boil. All right, let me keep an eye on that foam. I'm just going to give her a quick little stir just to knock down that foam. Again, this is why you leave plenty of headspace in your pot so you can avoid a boil over. All right, and now it's time for our first hop addition. We are utilizing 0.2 ounces of Saaz hop. That's a classic noble hop. Go ahead and put that in. And then, oh boy, that's why you got to pay attention. We will come back in 50 minutes for our next hop addition. All right, guys, we have about 10 minutes left in the boil. We're going to make our second hop addition. I have 0.1 ounces of Hallertau hops. Again, another classic noble hop. Sure. All right, we're going to let this go for another 5 minutes, and we'll come back for our last addition. All right, guys, with 5 minutes left in the boil, we're going to do one more addition. We're just going to add our Whirlfloc tablet. Lagers traditionally are very clear beers, so Whirlfloc, Irish moss, be sure to pitch in something to help clarify that wort. That is kind of part of the reason we have the lagering process. So I'm going to let this boil for 5 more minutes, and then we'll come back to chill our wort because there's some specific things we need to do. All right, guys, time to chill our wort. This is another part where we kind of differentiate ales and lagers. You look back at my past videos, basically we'll chill this down, and once we get to 70, that's generally cool enough to pitch ale yeast. Lagers, because we're going to ferment at much colder temperatures, we have to drop this temperature even more. So we're going to try to get this down to the low 50s, so about another 15 or so degrees from normal. So just whatever you have to, get extra ice packs, what have you. But we want to get this temperature down to the low 50s. And with that being said, I'm going to let this cool off. I got my fermenter sanitizing right now. We'll get this chilled. I'll do a gravity reading, and we'll come back to wrap up. All right, gang, time to wrap up. Real quick, let's jump into the numbers. Projected gravity 1054, projected final gravity 1013. That gets us to 5.4% ABV. Our projected IBUs are 21. Did a gravity reading right on the number, 1054. That is always nice to see. Real quick, let's talk about our yeast. This is one of the areas where ales and lagers different. A good standard rule of thumb for a gallon beer is 2 to 3 grams of yeast per gallon. Lagers, you want to bump that up, get to 4, 4.5. Remember, lagers ferment at cooler temperatures. Process is a little slower. Takes longer to hit a critical mass. We add additional yeast cells up front to help that out. Speaking of fermentation, again, this is where really lagers and ales split. If you live in a house that you know, the room temperature anywhere from 68 to 72, whatever, you could ferment most ales just on your countertop, what have you, with no real temperature controls needed. Lagers, that is not true. We need to be a little more precise. We need to hold them a little cooler. I have a keg fridge that I have a little thermostat in there, and we've turned it to a point where I've got it sitting around 52 degrees. And we're going to sit this in there for roughly 10 days to 2 weeks. We're going to monitor it. When I get closer to my final gravity number, I will start to raise the temperature till we get to the low 60s. At that temperature, we're doing something called a diacetyl rest. What is diacetyl? Diacetyl is a compound, a flavor compound that comes out during fermentation that can cause your beer to have a buttery flavor. Now, lagers don't enjoy those funky notes that we get, the fruity ester stuff we get from ale yeast. Lagers are meant to be clean. So we do this diacetyl rest to make sure we don't get that buttery flavor coming into our beer. After that diacetyl rest, we will then rack off into a secondary fermenter, drop the temperature back down to around 50, and then we're going to let that rest for about a month there. Then we'll go into bottling. Now, bottling, we are going to lager, and we're going to bottle and drop that temperature down to the 30s. My fridge is roughly around 38 degrees, and we're going to let that sit for a while. Lagers take longer. Generally, an ale you can have ready to drink in a few weeks. Lagers done at home, obviously commercial breweries are different, but lagers done at home, we're talking months now. This would be ready in roughly about 3 months or so, but we're going to stick with the style. These, you know, Marzen Marts, these are brewed in March to be ready for Oktoberfest, and that's when we're going to try the beer, and I can't wait for that. Well, I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.